Well, wow, here we are, 2 days. Been hearing a lot about Web3, digital assets, NFTs, the metaverse, and everything in between. What is a few things that have really stood out for you in the different sessions?
So, and apologize everyone, I brought my own notes to make sure that I covered a few sessions. A lot of things, I really liked it. It's a good mix of company stories, crypto native stories. Just refreshing the last ones we heard. I heard Chris talk about the confluence of Web 2 platforms with Web 3, meaning opening the market for access on what we use, Google Wallet, Apple Pay. I think that's critical. It's a very important topic that was always a problem in crypto. I'll be talking about that in our conversation. I love the Mattel discussion with Jordan. I mean, that's a proof point that any story can tap into these technologies, any brand can tap into these technologies, like even if a brand that is almost 100 years old. I mean, it's very important that this is not just about tech companies. NBA, loved Joey's presentation. I'm a big fan of Top Shot. I bought them very early. I love the way he defined Web3 as a tool to solve problems, more than NFTs. And I also love the quote he had that if you cannot talk about a problem in a simple way, you really don't understand it. And I think I'll talk about that too a little bit on the constructs. Did you hear anything you liked specifically?
You know, I think I was kind of reflecting on that before we came up here, and I think so much of what we've already done from a customer experience exists, but this is just that new technology that you can tap into. You could do what you're already doing, but you could actually just have more engagement, a deeper engagement, know your customers better, and I think that at the end of the day, that's all brands want to do.
Yeah, definitely.
So how do you see the future of Web3 for the C-suite?
Yeah, so I'll give you my perspective. So I'm part of a consulting company, so my role is less about launching products, but more helping companies think about the opportunities of these technologies, these constructs. For someone that worked in the industry, digital transformation is a big topic in the last 10, 20 years. And digital really brings a lot of things to the table. You can have new business models, you can improve costs, you can change the way your value chain works. I think Web3 has the same parallel. It's a new set of tools that allows you to transform parts of your business in many different ways. One of them is changing your business model. A good example is music label companies. Music label companies, they aggregate artists, they invest a lot up front, and then they collect a rev share of everything that happens with the artist. This is very disjointed, this process. It works for big artists. It doesn't really work for medium and small and upcoming artists. When you start having a platform that you can very easily tap on consumers to fund that early process of the artist, that everything that is done from a digital perspective, e-com, merch, anything on interactive experiences is collated into one platform, into one protocol, that allows you to expand pretty much everything you're doing from an artist financing perspective. That's one example. And all the labels we worked with our clients are trying to disrupt their own model by creating sister companies. Pharrell is trying this with Music.com. So way beyond NFTs of artists, like these can actually disrupt the entire business model of label companies. The other very cool thing for me is on value chains. There's a lot of opportunities to really tackle value chains, like consumer brands that we worked with are thinking about launching their own coin. So think about it. I'm going to say a random name. Again, I'm not talking about my client specifically, but imagine that there's a Walmart coin, that there's a Best Buy coin, and they want to create circular economies on their own value chain in their own partner stakeholder ecosystem. And think about how that changes completely the dynamics of us paying with fiat and having a exchange market, that there's a currency from the government versus you have your own currency of everything you interact with, all connected into an exchange.
So what would consumers get out of that?
So from an enterprise side first, so from a partner perspective, think about me as Walmart. I'm having my suppliers, right? And today I give you cash back in discounts or rebates. Tomorrow I could give you more with my own token, so you reorder for more and incentivize you to buy more from me, so I create a circular economy. if I take that surplus and I add it as rewards or points to consumers, I can give more in cash back to consumers. And so I retain more money into my own ecosystem that today would go as pure fiat that could go anywhere. And that's a closed-the-loop economy that before we couldn't create without, what we call smart contracts and factor money. The other thing, looping back to digital transformation, is the improvements on customer experience, cost, everything. I mean, I think someone talked about Shopify on token-gated commerce. I mean, there's a lot of constructs that are incredible. Token-gated commerce, I don't know if the audience is aware, but it's basically when you connect your wallet with your assets into an e-commerce experience. And based on what you own, it is personalized and tailored to what you want, which is flipping the personalization model completely upside down. Today, a lot of companies farm your data. A lot of times they don't have your consent. Again, I'm not talking about 40Y, it's my personal opinion. But they will flip the model into you offer your data and that translates into a personalized experience. That completely changes the model that exists today and that changes the customer experience that these companies can provide.
Can you go just a little bit deeper on that? Because we've heard that a few times now, that you get to own your data. How do you own it? What's that user experience like?
Well, I mean, without getting too technical, the assets you have, and we're talking about digital representations or digital assets, they live on a common protocol which can assert in, Ethereum, Solana, whatever it is. Because of cryptography and cryptocurrency, the only person that has access to the content of those assets is you through a private key and a public key. And when you interact with what we call a DApp, a decentralized application, you define what you share with that application. Whereas today, the model is different. The data lives on a server and a client that is owned by a company, your Facebook photos, and you log in, you access, but the data is not yours. So they're flipping the model to who owns the data actually shares what they want in that protocol.
Thank you.
And then, look, like digital transformation, I see the same signs. I see roles like chief metaverse officer, I see companies, spinning off Web3 and metaverse things like very much in the beginning we heard digital, the digital chief digital officer, we're still here. So same signs on that. And then I see new products and new services being built. I mean, Twitter is creating a twin blockchain, service that tries to change a bunch of problems that they have today, which is the algorithm is a black box, into a world that can be open source. And it's mostly financing by ads, which in the future can be financed by tokens or, you owning a piece of it. And then another fascinating case study, in my opinion, Mercado Libre from Brazil. It's kind of a mix of eBay and Amazon. They're actually launching their own coin. Whereas the same concept that I was talking before, they reward customers when they buy, like imagine in Amazon and you get an Amazon coin. And then they create an exchange where people can actually change those coins for fiat. So a company that was a transaction company is opening the door to becoming a bank. That's pretty amazing.
That's very interesting. So as you look really at the future here, what advice would you give to the C-suites to go deeper?
I find, so I'll talk about Web3 less than metaverse, like I'm talking about crypto as crypto, blockchain, and applications. I find it harder to study than other topics because it brings a lot of different concepts. It brings technology, it brings math and economics, it does bring base information on how business models work. It brings a lot of game theory and incentivization. So it's not the easiest thing to study. One thing I noticed in UI in my company is that there's a part of the teams that actually read a few articles, but it's very hard to fully understand it when you're just reading, one-off articles. A few things that I found very useful. Reading long form text. I'm talking about old school books, we're talking about digital assets, but actual long form allows you to understand the first principles, foundations. I'm talking about books. I'm talking about white papers. I'm reading Vitalik, the Ethereum founder. There's a book that has these entire letters from the foundation of Ethereum until now. It's fascinating. I mean, you absolutely start understanding how everything connects, how crypto started, and then how that translates to identity, and why DAOs are there for a reason, how smart contracts work together. It's all a continuum, you know? Where we're talking about NFT or a token, it's the same thing. It's exactly a Nash cycle and a bit, right? So long form for sure, read books, that's one. Get a Twitter handle if you don't have. I mean, the community is all there. I have a full list. If you guys want, I can send it to you. Just follow 60 people, and that's enough for the day.
Is there anybody off the top of your head you could suggest?
Oh, so many. I mean, Chris Dixon for A16Z has been a person that, you know, has been pushing a lot of, you know, basic concepts to the masses, thinking about what's happening in the future. Packy McCormick is a, you know, a thought leader that I really respect. I read a lot about what he writes. I mean, I could be here a full day, but I think, look, if you have this and you start following, you know, a few Substacks that you like, I think it's a very good way to keep in touch. I mean, talking to startups, coming to these conferences obviously helps, but I do feel that if you don't do these two things before, you kind of get lost. You kind of, NFTs, primary revenue, nice, utility, but you really never get to it. So I think I would say, if you're really in the beginning, I would invest more on long form than random conferences. And then, most importantly, you will hear from this, everyone, is just be a user. You know, buy an NFT, get your wallet, try your stuff. I mean, it comes naturally to me because I used to do this. But if it doesn't come back to you normally, I think I would really incentivize to do that.
So, how did you get started in all of this? Like, what first piqued your interest?
I loved something that Jordan said on Mattel, like even 40Y. The whole construct of this is about decentralization, grassroots movement, is using code to organize things up to a point that you can have your own currency to do that. In EY, and personally, this was exactly the same thing. In 2017, I got introduced by it, by a friend. I mean, very similar story to everyone. I bought my first ETH. I bought a bunch of things that today don't exist. And then I just started getting into it. You know, there's an expression in the community that you're down the rabbit hole and you're just there and you're just reading and you're just, whoa, how is this connected? Like, if you read Vitalik's letters, he talks about high complex concepts like sociology, philosophy. You know, one thing he talks about is super rationality. I mean, it's pretty amazing how he's tying technology to these concepts. I got really into it, and then my clients started asking, does anyone talk about Web3? And I was like, whoa, okay, so I can do this for work too. And I started doing this almost, you know, I wouldn't say full-time, but a lot of what I do today and during the day is about this.
So I know I'm kind of going off script here of what we talked about, but
no problem.
You know, one of the common things I keep hearing from people is I know I should know more, which is why people are here, but I'm scared. I'm not quite sure where to start and how to go. Like, what advice would you give to people in that like moment that they're in right now?
So I believe that in this topic, I'll emphasize what I said before. You cannot learn without first principles. So the blockchain itself, the concept, if you're starting, it's hard to understand. And then the industry uses a lot of buzzwords and a lot of jargon, and you read a few things, your head is spinning, and you kind of get it. You have to get it. I read, and again, this is not I don't know the author or anything, but I can tell you the book that for me changed everything was a book called Tokenomics. And Tokenomics actually is, 300-page, something like that, that actually starts with the basic foundations. How does ledgers work? What's a token? How does, there's a big, strong tech foundation. It takes time, you read 10 pages, like, oh, I wish I was watching House of Cards or, or Lord of the Rings. But, if you push through it and if you're interested, I think that foundation is very important for you to start understanding, because if you do that now, when we talk about NFT or tickets or, we're talking about currency, you understand that everything is a continuum. There's not that much difference versus what it is. It's just applications are different.
And in your experience, you're talking to a lot of people. I mean, most people are just starting right now, right? So people have not missed the boat on this?
Definitely not. I mean, this is, I was hearing the amount of people that have MetaMask wallets in the US, and it's less than 10%. I mean, this is just starting. It's just very amplified because of social media and so on. But I mean, I have to tell you that with my clients, this is a topic that it's very easy to go talk with a CEO level, C-suite, because everybody's kind of FOMO of, talking about these things. And a lot of times, the most obvious question I get is, why do I need Web3 to do this? Why do I need blockchain to do this, right? And we heard the same questions when there was internet, right? Like when we say we sell books online, it's like, what do you mean? I'll just go to the bookstore, So there's a lot of parallels with internet a few years ago, a lot of parallels with digital transformation. Very much in the beginning, the world is an oyster for any industry. No one really defined like killer applications. The innovation will come from people that have Web3 foundations and are very deep into a set of problems, and will start thinking how to solve them with the tools.
All right, so one other question too. I know I've heard this from people throughout the conference. How is Web 2 really truly different from Web 3 when you think about customer experience and loyalty and things like that?
Web 2 was a natural consequence of the difficulties of scaling certain things. I mean, user-generated content was created. A lot of the engagement comes from knowing what you're doing, having past history, and so on. And the current structure was defined that, if one entity held a lot of that data, they could deliver superior experiences. I mean, it's very easy now to talk about how tech companies have it wrong and, they're not really helping a lot of parts of the world. But it's an amazing experience that a company like Google brought, that Facebook brings, it's just very different than other companies, and that's because scalability mattered. These new constructs actually create a way to provide that scalability without depending with an entity. And that's one thing. And then the second thing is, it does bring elements that internet didn't have before. The fact that, just think about this, the fact that you can actually be a user of a project but actually own it, it's totally different. It's almost like when you buy something. If Amazon wasn't a Web3 company, you could buy something from Amazon, and then you become a shareholder of Amazon. I mean, this is way bigger than communication and web platforms. This is, has an implication on governments. I don't know if you heard about cloud nations, the concept of new countries that will be created that are not physical, right? On a protocol. I mean, this has way more implications that I think Web 1 to Web 2 had. Now, zero Web to Web 1 was huge. I'm not sure if it's going to be as big, but I think Web 3 brings much more to the table.
So Cloud Nations will do a whole nother conference on that.
Okay.
So you are talking to a lot of the C-suite right now. You shared one example of what people are hearing, but for the people who are a little bit further down the road, what types of things are they working on? What are they thinking about?
For me, so in all the companies that I work with, there's two poles, there's two anchors. One is the CEO is interested on knowing more, because his kids have Ethereum, or, someone had an NFT. And then you have a split of skepticals that is like, what the hell is this? Versus, very intrigued people. And then you have, it's very interesting, on the clients we talk about, all these brands that we've heard, sometimes we're talking with a person that they don't have a role. There's someone from the marketing department, there's someone from the legal department, there's someone from finance. And in the beginning, we thought it was weird. It's like, okay, so Web3 lives in finance in this company? We're trying to match the people to the actual team, but no, it's not true. It's the person that was more informed, the person that was more interested in the space, started talking about it, brought ideas to the table, and they're becoming the anchor for those projects in those companies. And so it's pretty much a grassroots, movement, and people try to solve problems, or people try to mirror things that they've seen in their own organizations.
So What would you tell those C-suite leaders and our C-suite leaders that we have today? Like, what conversations should they go back to their businesses and have?
For me, it's less about the short-term opportunity, but about getting familiar with a set of technologies that can change their industry.
So it's not about making short-term revenue.
Not for me. In EY, we cover, 20 industries. And we did a day thinking about the implications. Every industry can be disrupted by a set of technologies. Some of them currency heavy, some of them, fragmentation of IP. I mean, I work on the media side of things too, and tech. And for example, on the media side, the fact that IP can be crowdfunded, the fact that you can buy a piece of movie that was not even released, you buy a script, you actually participate on the decisions of that movie, you actually build the characters with the director or the production team. That's pretty amazing. Yeah. And I could be on and on and on. I mean, in highly intensive value chain industries, the traceability is incredible. I mean, at a certain point, you can have information of your bottle of wine shipping from Italy and what's happening to it on a blockchain. So I would say every industry, there's a lot of opportunity.
So people really should be thinking about how this can disrupt their business, how they're going to change with it, how they're going to take advantage of it versus potentially fall victim to it?
100%. It's very hard, right? I serve big companies, actually startups too through PE, but mostly big companies. And big companies are not very good at launching new products or disrupting themselves. It requires a lot of energy. It requires a lot of people with the right mindset. But the truth is all there. I mean, there are going to be companies that will be disrupted by these technologies. And the best place to really start within. The mentality should be less about, so sometimes I go to companies and I hear, what's the business case? It's a few millions is nothing. For me, a company of 60 billion, why am I talking about this? But for me, I think those companies are missing the point. The point is trying things, is disrupting parts of their business, is actually trying to create new things. There's a concept of skeuomorphic design, which is most people see something new and they try to translate that thing into the new technology, right? When fixed telephones came and there was cellular, people thought, oh yeah, they can stay here, but there's no cord. No, you can carry it and they're smaller, right? And so to think about this, think first principles, don't think about analogy. You're not translating a process that exists today on the web or not even on the web to Web3. You're just solving a problem with a different set of tools.
Love it. Okay, so lots of things that people can do. What do you think are the 2 to 3 things that people should do to get started today? You will soon realize, if you start reading, you will soon realize if you like it or not. I think for some of us, it becomes very natural. In college, I used to study economics and game theory, so for me, it's very easy to read a white paper. I'm all over it, just like reading We all love reading white papers.
But if you don't have that, find the angle that excites you, meaning a lot of people that work with me, we have I would say UI was one of the first ones jumping on blockchain. We have a blockchain team that is, a few years old. We have a big business model team that is thinking about this all the time. A lot of people are not excited on white papers or, the protocols themselves, but they're interested on the angles of industries, on, the collectibles for consumer, on tokenomics for banking and insurance. So if you find your angle and you get excited, I do think that being an expert in Web3 in 5-10 years is going to be a key asset to work in a company. I think a lot of people are going to be ahead in organizations if they're experts in this topic.
Okay. Well, before we open it up for questions, any last thoughts that you want to add?
No, like the other difference on this topic, someone said, if you're an expert, you really don't get it. I agree. It's impossible to keep up. I spend 12 hours on this and I hear new stuff every day. It's like, oh, a company is doing this. Like, I never heard about that company. It's very, very dynamic, which is a problem if people keep their cognitive standards the same, which is no disrespect for CRM or anything, but if you're working on a CRM thing or if you're working on a backend system, they stay stale pretty much for, every year you refresh, they change a little bit. The applications change every 2 weeks. There's someone trying something, 99% won't work, but it's very dynamic. So that's a problem, but that's pretty cool. I mean, we write decks, we write a point of view, and in a month we trash it because something happened. And sometimes it's very frustrating. We cannot use anything we wrote a month ago, but at the same time, it's pretty cool.
Good, love it. Kristen, any questions that we have from the audience?
We have one right here from our very own Basil.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Nuno, are you seeing any particular growth in any one industry vertical or sector more than others?
Yes.
In terms of interest, yeah, please.
Yes. So industry-wise, definitely there's two industries that are leading the way in terms of revenue. One is brands, consumer, retailers. On the collectible side, transaction side, it's just a very obvious business. I mean, creating a unit of, Gucci, for example, they created a unit of digital products, in fact, right? The translation is very simple. Every product, you can create a digital version of it that has value. There's exclusivity that matters. Any brand that has collectibles, that's very, very obvious. I think that's why NFTs are so mainstream. They're very easy to understand. They're a very good extension of certain businesses. So consumer, brands, retail, for sure. Tech and media. Media side, IP, funding, every, back-end thing that happens. And then on the tech side, obviously, because that's where the native things are. And then the last one is definitely what we call financial markets. Because obviously, I mean, if you, I don't know now with the market cap, but like if you start adding up all the currencies that exist, ETH and Bitcoin together and all the altcoins, you're talking about more than $3 trillion. And so even if there's a lot of speculation, even if a lot of it is not worth it, there's a lot of money that people cannot ignore. So financial services is definitely the killer application so far.
Any other last questions for Megan and Nuno? Wonderful. Well, thank you guys for closing us out on that high note. Give them a round of applause.